Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you are having a good week. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the 15 new Infinity maps released for TTS for the campaign, Operation Militant Purity. Now, because I know that a lot of people don't like watching really long videos, just the main points here I want to get across. Number one, if you check the link in the video description, that is my Steam workshop. Many of you guys are subscribed to it already, but if you're not, this is where you can get the maps from. You basically hit the subscribe button, go into TTS, look at your workshops, and you'll be able to get into a room which contains several chests. The one that we're going to be talking about is this white one down here, titled Operation Militant Purity Maps. Second point, these are publicly available maps for everybody to use and enjoy and have some fun with. If you are not very good at map making, if you are bored of playing the same maps all the time, here are some fresh new ones. You will find that a lot of effort's gone into them. They are relatively well balanced. They cover a range of ITS missions and custom missions. They look good, and they're very competitive. So everybody's welcome to use them. I will say, though, that if you are somebody who is running your own leagues, running your own TTS events, running your own campaign, and you are going to use my map for your event, could you at least just maybe acknowledge that it's made by me? I mean, that's the only fair thing to do. I mean, you don't have to sort of, point people towards my Discord or my YouTube channel. It'd be nice if you did, but at the very least, just let people know that it was created by somewhere else. In the same way of saying that, this map pack actually includes 4 of Bad Lazar's maps. I obtained permission from him to use them. I've modified them ever so slightly, but they weren't made by me, and I would like you guys to check out Bad Lazar's Steam Workshop mod for his wonderful maps as well, which are publicly available as well. So that's that. But in this video, I'm just going to quickly take you through each of them and give you my comments and thoughts and small explanations about how things are played. Most of it's very self-explanatory. I also want to say that I've been reading a lot of chat about the campaign, and there are still a few people who aren't quite understanding how the pairings are going to work with missions. Some people think that it's going to work the same way as it did last campaign, with everybody in the same team playing the same map. Not quite. What will happen is that I'll go into the chat news channel and I will look at every individual pairing. So player 1 from Pano, player 1 from Hakaslam, player 2 from Pano, player 2 from Hakaslam, and I'll give every individual match a randomly selected map. And it will be posted on the spreadsheet, it'll be posted in the Discord. Everybody will know what map they're going to be playing on or what mission in advance, but it's going to be randomized. The only exception is Nomads versus JSA. Nomads invested a little bit more of the GSP points system into vetoing maps, so they'll get to veto a couple of maps. I think they told me it was going to be Temper War and Supremacy not being played, but everybody on the team will get a random map from the remaining pool, and we'll deal with that in the Discord. Okay, so hopefully all that makes sense. I will now take a bit of a look at the maps I made and say some things about them, and yeah. So let's just go through the list one by one. Here's the finish line map. This is a sort of like a Yu Ching theme map. Originally what I was going to do is have 8 of the maps look really similar or really appropriate for a particular faction and give that faction some advantages and benefits on that particular map, but we found it was going to be a little bit difficult to balance that appropriately, so I've decided to just put that rules mechanic on the back burner. We might be able to use that in a future campaign. So this table is featuring the Yu Ching paper Corvus Belli terrain and the Yu Ching themed map. It is the mission finish line. So what you're wanting to do is get your data tracker from. Let me just change my color so that my indications actually show up a little more clearly. So you're basically just trying to get your data tracker from one side to the other. You'll get 2 points from that. But if your data tracker dies, your opponent gets a point, so be careful. They also get a point if they kill more stuff than you over the end. So it's not all about just throwing something across the other side of the table, and you might want to do that later in the game. But as you can see, there's a couple of panoplies, and then there's the transmission antenna in the middle, which you want to go and capture. With this map, if you go down to ground level, I've made it so that there are some really long, narrow fire lanes like this one, but at ground level, there's also a lot of blockage and a lot of obstruction. You have to sort of cover a very thin lane with your sniper or your hidden missile launcher or whatever it may be. Once you get to the top level though, it's a bit different. I mean, you can deploy up here and see quite a lot of the table, but the overall philosophy behind designing these maps is that I wanted to make it so that if you plan on playing a faction which has got a really cool missile launcher or sniper that you're really psyched up about using, I don't want to disappoint you by accidentally putting you on a map where you've got no opportunity to fire your big gun. But also I'm thinking of people who are just dreading having to face that Varuna Kamau sniper in a link team with their US Ariadne or whatever they may have. So I've tried to design maps where there's always going to be some section of the map where you can kind of sneak past that sniper a little bit and block things off with smoke. When you've got a very long fire lane like this, obviously one smoke grenade completely shuts that down. Whereas when you've got a guy up here, well, there are going to be so many angles to come at him and shoot at him from and hit him from less than 16 inches and try and outplay him. But also, you can still find ways to put smoke down and avoid him to some extent as well. So that's generally what I'm going for with maps like this. Let's take a look at the next one. Open this up. Firefight. So I believe this was the Pano looking map that I came up with, sort of like a Pano military industrial complex, which is almost finished completion. You've still got the dump trucks and stuff bringing in supplies and so forth. Similarly with the last map, if you go down to ground level, there's a lot of obstruction, very difficult to get a long fire lane. What I did notice is that these buildings on the red deployment zone did have a huge amount of line of sight. So I've actually put these walls here, these barriers. If I just go and grab myself a model to sort of show you what I mean here. What I wanted to do is give you a situation where if you put your sniper here, or even just put him right at the back there, your sniper's got an amazing angle down that street. But the wall here will actually block this area off, so if you're wanting to come down this flank and they've got an amazing sniper here, you can actually avoid it. And if you put it here, of course, this building sort of blocks its line of sight off a little bit as well. And if you put it over this side, then you've got a great angle down that sort of side of the street, but this entire side of the map is sort of being blocked off by this barrier, which I think is a really important feature of this map. And the idea is just to make people think a little bit more about where they're putting their trooper. But the deployment zone should have plenty of cover. You could obviously go inside these buildings. Over this side, maybe a little bit less, but still this little a barrier section still gives you tons of space to hide. This is Firefight after all, so you're able to deploy, I think, 16 inches up. So there shouldn't really be any lack of deployment cover. But in the same side of it, if you're really wanting to go first and alpha strike them, you're 16 inches up. There's plenty of clear paths to get around the map. If they're putting AROs up, well, that's just going to mean that you can shoot them and get a lead on army kills, which is a big deal. So I think this map's looking pretty cool. Let's take a look at another one. Clear table. Alrighty, what do we got next? Frontline. So this is a Battle Azure map. Originally, when I was thinking of giving the factions a mission that was suitable for them, that would sort of be their home base, I was thinking Frontline might be a good Ariadne map, just because since they're so good at keeping cabin markers out in the midfield and controlling the midfield space, and that's definitely something you want to do on Frontline and have you guys survive out there. I haven't really changed Battle Azure's map that much, other than putting in the spotlight lighting, which I think looks really cool. Again, if you get a model out and just chuck them under the lights, they cast shadows and stuff, which I think is really awesome, especially for screenshots and bat reps and stuff like that. It looks really, really cool. One thing I did do to change this map was just to double up this pile of crates here. Yes, you could put a hidden deployment infiltrating sniper up there, but still, it can't even see the entire map, and it's going to be vulnerable against short-range weapons up there. But the idea is that if you're deploying stuff over here, link team kind of thing, I wanted at least something in the center that blocked the line of sight from all of these sort of big hill outcrops. The trees don't really do anything, and just don't forget the ladders are in the form of these vines. You've got to mouse over them, so I don't want anybody to miss the fact that there are these big ladders going up and down these really cool rocky outcrop type hills. Really interesting map. I'd actually be quite keen to play a game on this map, because these terrain assets just change up the feel of the map a lot. Note that this building doesn't have a third level state. It's sort of like a ruined building where the roof is caved in, so you can't go on top of that, which I really quite like. So that is the frontline mission. Let's take a look at another one. Clear table. Unmasking. This is probably the one I finished last. This was going to be the Hakislam kind of themed map. I was tempted to put like a desert storm going straight through it, but this map is kind of clean, but I'm using the terrain assets which look a little bit weird for deployment. I mean, as you can imagine, we could play it that these domes could have a guy deploying on it because the 3D models kind of fit on it, but what I've done is I've basically made a ruling that all of these domes just can't deploy and I'm not allowed to. If you mouse over the actual asset, you can't. But some of these bridges have got a yes on them, meaning you can deploy on them, so you could deploy a guy there and walk him along that. This is a pretty good map for climbing plus and super jump because you can get up and down these little archways and stuff like that. And again, some of these buildings you're allowed to put a guy on top of. You can't put them inside the building, although the asset actually does allow for deployment in there. We're just going to make a ruling for this game to say no, we're not going to allow your guy to be in there at all. But yeah, tried to make this map kind of closed off, and I also tried to think very carefully about high value targets, because this is unmasking. This is where you're going to put your decoys. So if you look at this, the line across here is the line of 16 inches, and you can put your HVTs out beyond that. So the player on the red side is going to be looking closely at this spot for HVTs there. Then you can come across here and you can put it in this little crevice, in that little alcove there. You could even put it like right here, although it gets shot through the center. I think players are really going to like this spot for their HVTs, and if you really want to, you can even put them further out in the middle, obviously, as well. One funny strategy you can do with this map is just put an HVT right out in the middle of nowhere. I wouldn't recommend that, but I've even heard of some players putting one out in the middle of nowhere and two of them in the really obvious hiding spots, but making the obvious one out in the open, the actual real DT. Wouldn't recommend that, but it occasionally works. On this side, so you can see the 16-inch line is around about there. So my thinking is that players are really going to like these spots here. And obviously this spot here, of course, they can take this spot here, or if they want to put their HVT further up, even in this little corner, which is closer to the enemy, but still relatively hidden with total cover. So both sides have several really obvious and decent places to put their decoys and designated target. Great, and mind you, remember these big towers can't deploy on them, can't deploy on the domes, but this card and the mouse over text on all the terrain should give you enough information about where you can put your troops. Alright, so we have Panic Room. This is a mission that I haven't even played on. It's a new mission for ITS. Rock No Die added a specific Panic Room asset to the mod, so I've decided to use that. This is a mission where obviously it's there's a shrinking box which gets smaller and smaller, and you've got to stay within it, otherwise you take damage. But these antenna things over here also give you a way of surviving. So you can either keep your troopers next to this thing, which is why I put them there, with a little wall next to them, or you can head in towards the Panic Room, which of course can be altered so you can actually see into it a bit more. Alright, so as I've written on the text there, you can't shoot from one side of the room to the other, but you can shoot into the room or out of the room, so there's that. You can't use climbing plus. I don't know if I've even written that on the room. Normally I write that you can't use climbing plus to go up top of that thing. I think that's allowed on this mission, but I mean, talk to your opponent before the game as to whether you want that to be the case. Alright, other than that, just a pretty basic map with a lot of really straightforward and playable assets. You've got your walls and your containers as per usual. So we'll clear that out. Oblique Assault, this was a really cool looking map in my view. I spent a lot of time with it. Let's drop it in and have a look. I've been finding some really cool textures to use for the mats underneath, so that's why you got this platform over here. I've been trying to make my platforms high enough so a Silhouette 1 can actually vault over it. So these days with my newer maps, if you see something that it looks too tall for a Silhouette 1, it probably isn't. Let's just double check that. Yeah, so quite clearly there you can see that this silhouette can actually vault over it. So if you've got a little pal bot, he can definitely step up there. But really loving the idea of using these spotlight lighting effects on the actual XCOM lights, just to illuminate where the objectives are. Again, if you bring Wild Bill over here, he casts this awesome shadow with the spotlight next to him, which I just really think that adds a lot to the mood. Again, this is an open or a closed map depending on where you look at it from. You can kind of stand up on these assets and see a ton of the battlefield. You can take this path around this side of the map over here and actually avoid a lot of line of fire. If you really want to get into close combat, use your shotguns and things, you can come around these little streety areas here. So it's a kind of a map where it's broken up, on this side being the more dense, and this side having the longer fire lanes, especially once you get on top of the containers. But I think it's a reasonably fair and balanced map, and a really, really good looking map. So a map that I'd be keen to play on very soon. What have we got next? Tempo War. I believe this is the Monkey God Temple map, which I had a lot of fun making. There's kind of a really gimmicky and trivial little mechanic here with the circle of fire. But yeah, you can sort of see this sort of lava volcano map. It's like an underground cavern or something like that. The fire lanes around here are a little bit awkward and long-ranged. And of course there are these cave assets here which you've sort of got to work around. I mean, some of them are very easy to put a guy next to, but if you're ever having trouble, never forget, guys, that you can always just hover over your model, hit L for lock, hit F8 for gizmo, left click them, and then you can highlight this little green square and just click on that when it goes yellow, and you can just move him around, and you can just move exactly where he needs to be, and then of course later escape, unlock him if you want to start moving him again. So that's what you'd want to do if you run into trouble with any of these bits of terrain. So yeah, this is kind of like the monkey invasion themed map. There is a circle of fire here, and there's a tribute chest where you can tribute something to the monkey if you want to be immune to it. There's really not much motivation to interact with a circle of fire other than the panoply, and most players I don't think will bother. But what I'm going for here is that if you are standing around about there, you are fine, but as soon as you actually touch the graphic, you will take a damage 14 continuous hit from the flamethrower. What you're allowed to do though is, of course, you can move first short skill up to here, then declare a dodge, and if you pass the dodge, you move a couple of inches into here, and we're just going to say that you can clear the circle of fire that way. If you move up to the middle of the star here, you can try and pass a whip check and get something out of the panoply. You don't need to be a specialist for that, and being a specialist doesn't give you any advantages. Or of course, if you've got nothing better to do and you're winning the game by a landslide and you feel like having some fun, you can come over to this chest, spend a short skill to take a willpower check. If you pass it, this model is considered to be immune to fire, having no other game effect against your opponent other than the fact that you can then move freely to touch the panoply. So just a funny, silly little thing about the map. Most players won't even bother with that interaction, but I thought it would be really cool. But again, Tempo War is a quadrant control type map. Have a careful read of the custom mission for it. It is end of player turn scoring, not end of round scoring, which changes up the dynamic of this mission a lot. And it's quite a popular improvement on Supremacy, in my opinion, and a lot of people do agree with that. Great, so that's the Monkey God map. Then we have Supremacy, which of course is the Corvus Belli version of it. This map is one of my absolute favorite maps. Spent a ton of time in this, making it look really, really cool. Supremacy as a mission is a kind of a, take second turn mission at all costs, but it's still a mission you can have a decent game on. Shout out to Cavrion, who supplied me with some Aleph and Greek god themed memes. You got Achilles here, and then you got the little robots workshop over there. Then there's the anti-Yu Ching thing here. Because they're playing Yu Ching first round, they decided to throw in some memes. I didn't get to use all of their memes on the map, only a few of them. Then, of course, we've got the console over here where there's the Terminator 2 Judgment Day clip, which I'm really enjoying. But overall, I think this map looks really, really awesome, using some Star Wars assets and stuff and XCOM assets just to make it feel like the inside of the Death Star or something like that. Very cold, very sterile. This section of the map's got some long fire lanes, but also a lot of places to avoid your opponent. Similarly with this one, I've tried to break off a lot of lines. Over here it says that the walls are infinitely high, so just to clarify, these white walls, these grey walls, infinitely high, right? But this building over here is not infinitely high, it's just a normal building. This wall, infinitely high. This little room, the wall's infinitely high. There's no restriction on shooting through both doors in this one, so unlike some of the other maps, you can just shoot straight through. Guys, please don't try and turn the doors on and off. All of the doors are meant to be permanently open on this map, so just bear that in mind. And if you try and change the door, you generally get a loading error anywhere and it turns purple, which is not really what we want. So just wanted to clarify that, but yeah, can't wait to see some games on this map because it looks cool, looks sick. Clear the table. What have we got next? Recovery. I think this is another Battle Azure map. This was the only map that sort of is partially JSA themed. I haven't really edited this map other than to put the recovery objectives in. So this side is going to be a little bit easier to defend the beacon than the other. That's okay because I want, you know, choosing table side to be a big factor, not just picking turn order. Over here I've just moved the food booths out of the way a little bit of the beacon, but other than that I've kept his map relatively intact. I have played on this map before. It's a pretty decent map. It does have these tall buildings over here to watch the majority of the table, but that's life. We're going to have some maps which are extremely open and some other maps which are a little bit more closed off. And remember guys, you won't be able to count on which map you're going to be getting. It's going to be fairly randomized, so there's going to be a luck component to that, unfortunately, but it's a campaign. It's going to be fun. Okay, supplies. I believe this is my Space Crusade map. There is a workshop out there with some assets from the classic Space Crusade game. When I was growing up in the 90s, my dad had a friend who was into board games. He invited me as a kid around to play with him one night, and we played Space Crusade, and I was just absolutely hooked. And that is the game that got me into 40k and Warhammer Fantasy, and then War Machine, and then Infinity. So that was well over 20 years ago now, but I still remember playing with the Space Marines and stuff. And if you look up that workshop mod, you can actually play Space Crusade. They've got the 3D models, they've got all the tokens. But what I've done is I've just pulled out the quadrants and made them into Infinity maps, so that's what you got for supplies. Remember, these cream-colored walls here are infinitely high. Everything else is not. So the does it say cream-colored wall? So this grey wall, not infinitely high. These containers, not infinitely high. So if you want to avoid their sniper, you definitely can take some angles around here, but I've also left some really long fire lanes here as well. And this is deliberate. I want snipers and missile launchers to be able to do some stuff, but again, we just saw that recovery map with JSA theme. That's a very, very open map, but this map is a lot more closed, and supplies is a mission that requires you to move out into the middle of the table, so there is a bit of variety there. Let's clear that off. 5 more. So the next one is the Armory. So a few people have been telling me that this map is pretty difficult to defend a deployment zone on. The total cover is a little bit uncomfortable. There's also a big fat ass ship there, and that means that these little smaller parts of the deployment zone are kind of, you know, not really, you know, I didn't actually note it on my note card, but you can't deploy in the water, of course. That's just not allowed, otherwise you'll drown. But the idea is that the Armory is a mission that is very second turn win, and I wanted to put pressure on players who will just really try and take second turn or deployment, and give people who want to alpha strike them a bit more of a chance to get in there and actually cut them off and knock out little bits. This blue side of the table is much better for defending because you've got this area where you can go prone behind that little wall in the building, and of course this ship over here is an opportunity to hide somebody. You are allowed to put your guy right over here, which is a very defensible position. You're still going to get killed by McMurray's speculative fire lob grenade. You're still going to get a feed-A deploy here behind you, and if you're not defending with any arrows at all, people can walk up this ladder and just come around in close combat with you quite easily, or just blast you with a pistol or shotgun. So there is that. No, you're not allowed to deploy in the smokestack, although that is hilarious. But anywhere on the white sort of spots. You can't deploy at the back because that is sort of off the map. The actual edge of the map is here, so you have to deploy within the grid. But yeah, kind of a cool looking map. Love the steam smokestack effect, and I like the idea of having this sort of ship to flank along. Let me know how your games go. Again, it's a fun one for Airborne Deployment. There is a comment about Airborne Deployment where if you want to walk your guy on the side of the table with parachutists, you can just start him there on the side of the ship. That counts as the edge of the table. Technically, you could also bring him on like maybe in the corner here. I think that would be legal. But again, it's in the enemy's deployment zone, so that wouldn't quite be legal, obviously. Now, this side of the ship basically ends here. So if you want to, you can deploy parachutists like on this side, but again, you have to deploy outside of their deployment zone anyway. I guess a Raziat would be allowed to deploy on the stern part of the ship. So let's just go show lines on stern. It's not really the stern. Is the ship got grid projection on? Yeah, unfortunately that's not really going to show, but technically a Raziat could come on. Well, it can't come on there. He could come on like there. No, he has to be in the deployment zone. We'll say the Raziat could, or Van Zandt or whatever, Carlotta, can be deployed there if you really want to. So if you're playing against one of those factions that can do that, just bear in mind that a guy could deploy there with parachutist deployment zone and just start wailing on you at the back. Same is true, obviously, for over here, as we know. So do be careful about that. Alright, next up we've got Mind Wipe. Again, new mission. We've got a frosty cold map where they're trying to keep their servers cold under the Arctic ice. Let's have a look. Here it is here. Mind Wipe is a map, or is a mission where it can be quite difficult to get over to the enemy objectives because they're so freaking far away. I was thinking of making a custom version of this where the consoles are a little bit further out, or at least one or two of them are. Didn't quite get around to that though. But just a fairly generic map, to be honest. You've obviously got a few little long fire lanes, but I've cut off a lot of the map with these buildings here. So generally, it's the kind of map where the enemy sniper is not going to be that oppressive. If they put their Noctifer missile launcher up on this this hill here, I've put this really big piece of terrain there so that you can sort of sweep around and go for these two objectives without actually being seen by that hill at all. So it's a map which is a bit more blocked off and obstructed for the long deployment zone versus deployment zone firefights. I know that a lot of you guys will like that. That's something I tend to like to play on myself with a lot of these maps. You can also head through these buildings or above the building as well, making you vulnerable to some more of those sort of sniper perches, but it's another way to get through the map and getting to the objectives. Note that this objective is a little bit more concealed than this one, so if you're going first, you might want to maybe grab this objective and then have things that can defend this one since it's a little bit more exposed. It's a great tactic for Mind Wipe in general. Acquisition, I think this is my Nomad themed map. I didn't want to make the Nomad themed map too claustrophobic because Nomads are just so good at close range, but I still have worked pretty hard to make this a map with at least some amount of density. You'll notice that if you go into the deployment zones and you put guys on top of these crates, they can see a lot of stuff, which is why I've doubled up the walls here to break that up a little bit. But remember, they are a little bit vulnerable too. I mean, there's a possibility of enemies getting on top of these areas and on top of this and shooting at these models here without giving them cover. From the other side of the map, you've got this little building here, which again, you could put a link team inside the building and one missile launcher on the top, and he would have cover against the ground. But again, the opponent might be able to sort of use the top of this plus the cover of that to shoot at him, and this model here wouldn't have cover against that, so there is the danger of that. Other than that, though, this is a mission, I think, where you have an additional 4 inches deployment. I can't quite remember. I think that's the case. So there should be plenty of places to hide things and defend for a while. This is a really good mission to go second on. But, you know, I like to think that the player going first has got that additional amount of space to send their alpha striking troops up. You've got the usual infiltration and AD, airborne deployment, impersonation, that kind of stuff to be able to move in. And there's always going to be ways to move in and hit your opponents. I have written on the card that you can't shoot through the cars, so if you've got Bill over here, he can see over top of this car asset, but not through all of the holes, unfortunately. Otherwise, that would get a little bit too awkward. Cool, so another nice looking thematic map. Couple more, and then we're done. Annihilation, so this is another Bad Lazor map. I really haven't changed this one much. This is a pretty new map in terms of assets. I think it looks really, really awesome. And I just wanted to celebrate the achievement of the assets that he's come up with by putting it in the campaign for people to play on. Annihilation, of course, is a very straightforward mission. My recommendation for new players who are on this map is just to try and be conservative with your troops, especially your expensive stuff. Try not to commit stuff too heavily unless you can trade efficiently and come out better off in terms of points. It's better not to sort of just move out to the middle if you don't have to with your expensive stuff. And this map has a lot of wide open areas which can be overlooked by buildings and things. Damn, my frame rate is really suffering at the moment with this this map. Hopefully that doesn't translate too much over to the video. But we've also got Sun Ce there, which is one of the assets I added to TTS, which has been copied. So he makes a really good statue. All right, so one more which we'll take a look at real quick. Where are we? Decapitation. This is the final Bad Lazo map. It's the train station, Evil Train. This map did really well in our maps competition, and I've modified it slightly for the decapitation mission, but generally this one's going to be pretty straightforward. The only real changes I've made is just to make these buildings here doubled up and taller, so that these two towers can't be seeing each other with snipers. Other than that, just go ham on this. This is really just a straightforward, brutal, kill 'em up mission. I've played this map before. It works fine. It looks like it's very oppressive in terms of the fire lanes, but it's really not. You can kind of get away with avoiding the people who are going to be on top of this building. And it's just such a cool looking map. I knew that I had to feature it in the campaign for people to enjoy it. If a map looks as good as this, you really want a lot of people to end up having some games in it. Awesome, guys. Well, that's it. Enjoy the maps. Even if you're not in the campaign, you can be playing on these maps, and I will be randomizing the matchup results over the next day or two. Good luck on the campaign, guys. We've got a lot of people playing in it, 14 guys per team. It's going to be a blast. Can't wait to see you guys streaming and doing some bat reps. See you soon.